The icy stages of winter sports demand absolute precision, yet their inherent volatility means a single error can instantly turn a routine moment into catastrophe. These are the worst recorded winter sports deaths, detailing the final seconds that reveal how fragile the line between control and fatality truly is. On December 5, 2015, a winter skating showcase took place at a large community arena in Quebec City. It was an annual event that brought together local skaters, families, and young athletes from nearby clubs. The stands were nearly full, with about 900 people watching from all sides of the rink. The atmosphere was typical for a weekend showcase: steady music, volunteers directing performers, and groups of parents taking photos from the bleachers. Marielle Fontaine, 19, a university student who trained at the rink since childhood, was scheduled to skate with Laurent Gagnon, her partner of 3 years. The two had a long history on the ice and an on-and-off relationship off the ice, something well known among their teammates. Even so, they had been practicing regularly and had passed all their rehearsals earlier that week without any issues. Their performance was positioned in the middle section of the program. The ice had been resurfaced shortly before their turn, leaving a smooth surface without visible ruts or soft spots. The music began on time, and Marielle and Laurent entered the rink together. Their opening movements, jumps, spins, and step sequences were completed without mistakes. To the crowd, it appeared like a standard, well-rehearsed routine. The incident happened during their side-by-side spin sequence, a move where both skaters rotate at high speed while keeping a set distance from each other. They began the spin cleanly, about 8 feet apart. From the stands, everything looked normal until Laurent attempted a correction in his balance. Several spectators reported that his right shoulder suddenly dipped, causing him to drift inward by about a foot. As he corrected his line, Laurent's skate blade swung closer to Marielle's path. A number of front-row viewers later said they saw the blade make direct contact with the left side of her face. The strike caused a noticeable cut, and blood appeared immediately. The blow also caused her to lose her balance at full rotation speed. Marielle fell backward with no chance to break the fall. Witnesses described her head hitting the ice with significant force, producing a sharp impact sound that carried through the lower rows of the arena. According to coaches and volunteers standing near the entry gate, her body went still the moment she hit the surface. Laurent lost his spin at the same time and slid toward her, coming to a stop on his knees. People seated closest said he shouted her name, but Marielle did not respond or move in any way. Blood from the facial cuts spread across the ice, but staff on scene later stated that her lack of response was more consistent with a severe head injury than with blood loss. The music stopped mid-track, and coaches rushed out immediately. Staff placed towels near her face but focused primarily on her head and neck due to the way she had landed. Observers noted that her breathing was shallow and she showed no signs of regaining consciousness. The showcase ended on the spot. Skaters waiting in line were sent back to the locker rooms, and the audience was asked to exit the arena calmly while emergency support continued inside. Only event organizers, coaches, and essential personnel stayed near the ice. Officials later confirmed that Marielle died from severe head trauma caused by the fall. The facial cut she received from the blade was significant, but was not considered the main factor. The direct impact of her head hitting the ice at high rotational speed produced injuries that were not survivable. After the incident, the organizers reviewed the entire program and removed all side-by-side pair elements from future showcases. The rink reopened for normal sessions the following week, but guidelines for performance spacing and partner routines were permanently updated. Marielle's accident showed how close contact choreography can turn fatal in an instant. On the glacier in Iceland, a different type of hazard, one created by nature itself, led to a fatal trap inside a narrow ice corridor. On March 3, 2018, a regional winter sport event took place on the Vatnajökull Glacier in Iceland. The morning began with steady cold air moving across the open ice, and temperatures sat in the low 20s degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility was good, with a light overcast sky that gave the glacier a flat, pale look. The wind stayed mild at first, creating a calm atmosphere around the starting area, where competitors checked their gear and waited for their group assignments. The competition was a mixed-discipline winter challenge that included distance snowshoeing, a timed ice corridor speed section, and a final uphill route leading toward the ridge. The layout spread across several natural features of the glacier, and the wide-open ice fields around the start line made it easy for officials to organize participants. Although the event wasn't professional, it drew skilled hobby athletes from around the country, people used to training outdoors in winter and comfortable moving across uneven ice. One of the registered participants was Hildur Sveinsdóttir, a 55-year-old retired schoolteacher from Akureyri. She had completed similar winter races in past years and was known for keeping a steady pace rather than racing aggressively. Event staff checked her gear at the starting line. Standard snowshoes, helmet, layered clothing, and safety spikes for the ice corridor portion. The race began in cold but stable weather. The snowshoe segment went smoothly, with competitors spaced out along the marked path. Hildur stayed in the middle group of racers, never falling far behind. The next part of the course led into a natural ice corridor carved over time by meltwater and shifting wind patterns. Event organizers used that corridor every winter, since its walls stayed thick and firm when temperatures remained low. 7 racers entered the corridor together, along with one official positioned near the entrance to monitor spacing. 2 racers behind Hildur had a clear view of her as the group moved forward. The corridor was narrow enough that competitors walked single file, and a frozen overhang hung above parts of the ceiling. The floor was a polished layer of ice, marked occasionally by traction scratches from earlier runs. A small tremor had been recorded early that morning, nothing unusual for Iceland, but minor ground shifts sometimes caused loose ice to crack. Officials noted it in their report, but found no immediate hazards during their inspection. As the group reached a tight bend inside the corridor, the incident began. Without warning, a slab of ice broke away from the right-hand wall. Several racers later told staff they heard a sharp cracking sound 1 second before it fell. The slab dropped at an angle, heavy enough to break into smaller pieces once it hit the floor. Hildur reacted by stepping backward, likely to avoid the falling piece. Her boot slid across a slick patch on the floor, and she lost her balance. She fell into a shallow recess formed naturally along the wall. At the same moment, the largest section of the slab continued its downward movement and pressed her into the recess. The 2 racers behind her heard her shout and saw that the slab had pinned her at the waist. They called out to the event official, who was still near the entrance, and attempted to move closer. But the corridor was too narrow to reach her quickly without risking additional collapse. Small cracks spread across the wall where the slab had broken off, and loose fragments continued to settle. The official instructed everyone to stay clear of the unstable section. He approached only close enough to assess the situation, but did not attempt to pull the slab away, since pushing it could trigger more breaks. From his position, it was clear that Hildur could not move. The slab's weight pressed firmly against the ledge behind her, and each shift caused more compression. For several minutes, the group stayed inside the corridor without moving, waiting for the ice around them to settle. Small cracks continued to shift along the wall, and the guide instructed everyone to remain still to avoid triggering more collapses. Once the chamber finally stabilized, he directed the racers to exit the corridor slowly, one at a time, making sure they kept as much distance as possible from the damaged section. Hildur remained pinned in the recess, while the others moved to a safer open area outside the bend. After the group reached stable ground, the guide returned to assess her situation from a secure angle where the wall showed no signs of further cracking. From that view, he could see that the slab had pressed directly across her lower torso and pelvis, trapping her against the ledge behind her with a force heavy enough to stop circulation and restrict breathing. The pressure had also compressed her chest and abdomen, injuries that often lead to rapid loss of consciousness. Based on the lack of movement and the position of her body, the guide confirmed that Hildur had died from severe crush injuries caused by the weight of the ice slab. The impact and pressure were significant enough that survival would not have been possible once she was pinned. The winter event ended immediately. Race organizers closed the entire glacier course and suspended the ice corridor segment indefinitely, while staff re-evaluated its stability for future competitions. Hildur was caught by an environment that changed without warning. But not every fatal incident comes from shifting ice or unstable terrain. Sometimes the danger happens indoors, during a routine game, on a rink where nothing seems unusual until one fall changes everything. On October 4th, 2015, a weekend rec league hockey game was held at the Anchorage Municipal Rink in Alaska. Outside, the early fall air was cold and steady, with temperatures in the mid-40s degrees Fahrenheit and a light breeze moving across the parking lot as spectators arrived. Inside the building, the atmosphere shifted to the familiar chill of an indoor ice arena, where the air stayed noticeably colder than outside and carried the faint sound of skates scraping during warm-ups. The rink itself was a standard community facility with metal bleachers lining both sides, bright overhead lights reflecting off the ice, and a recently resurfaced sheet that showed clean, even lines. By the time the puck dropped, about 300 people had taken their seats, including families, younger players in team jackets, and regular attendees who often came to weekend games. One of the players on the ice was Evan Carver, a 29-year-old IT assistant who skated in the league on weekends. Evan had been playing since high school, but treated the sport as a hobby. He used older protective gear, including a helmet he had worn for several seasons. Teammates had suggested he upgrade to a newer full coverage model, but he often said those helmets felt too bulky. As long as he tightened the straps on his own helmet, he believed it was enough for the level they were playing at. The match itself started without any unusual problems. Both teams moved the puck cleanly, and referees called only minor penalties. Evan played defense and spent most of the first period covering his zone and clearing pucks toward the boards. He skated confidently and communicated with his teammates during line changes. The incident that ended the game happened early in the second period. Evan skated to the blue line to receive a pass from one of his teammates. As he reached for the puck, a defender from the opposing team moved in to apply pressure. The defender's elbow clipped Evan's arm unintentionally, something that can happen easily during close play. 3 spectators sitting directly behind the protective glass later described what they saw. The contact caused Evan's skates to slip forward, removing his balance completely. His body went backward in a straight fall. He did not have time to brace or twist, and the angle of the fall left his head as the first point of impact. When he hit the ice, his helmet shifted upward from the force. The strap held, but the older padding inside could not stop the helmet from rotating. This left a section of Evan's skull exposed as his head struck the rink surface with significant force. Evan did not attempt to stand up or roll over. Several players on both teams immediately signaled to the referees and bench staff. A few skaters moved back to create space around him, while others knelt nearby to check if he was breathing or responding. The referees stopped play right away and waved for assistance from the bench and the arena staff. The crowd grew quieter as people realized what had happened. Some of the youth players near the board stepped away, and parents in the first rows moved closer to see if help was coming. Evan remained motionless as staff evaluated him. His helmet lay slightly tilted on his head, showing how far it had shifted from the fall. The rest of the game was canceled on the spot. Players left the ice and returned to the locker rooms while staff remained with Evan. Spectators were asked to exit the rink so responders could work without crowding. Later, league officials released a statement confirming that Evan died from a severe skull fracture and extensive brain bleeding caused by the direct impact of his head hitting the ice. The force of the backward fall created a break in the bone at the back of his skull and produced rapid intracranial bleeding, which compressed the brain within seconds. According to the medical review, injuries of that type lead to an immediate loss of function and are not survivable, even with fast emergency response. Following the incident, Evan's team reviewed their equipment guidelines. They adopted a rule requiring all players to wear full coverage helmets beginning the next season, including those who had previously used older or partial protection models. The league also updated its safety recommendations for recreational players of all ages. Evan's fall showed how quickly a routine play can turn deadly when the angle of impact works against the body. But on the slopes, the danger comes from something different: speed, ice, and one missed edge that can send a racer off their line in seconds. On February 20th, 2016, a regional women's Super G ski event took place on a competition course in Åre. The course was set up for intermediate and advanced amateur racers who competed in local circuits throughout the winter. Weather conditions were stable, with firm snow and temperatures cold enough to keep the surface hard. Race officials had inspected the track that morning and approved it for competition. One of the racers on the starting list was Sanna Holberg, a 26-year-old physiotherapy student from Uppsala. She was not a well-known athlete, but she had spent nearly 10 years competing in amateur alpine events. People familiar with the local circuit recognized her name from regional races. Her equipment and skis met standard competition requirements, and her coach checked her bindings and helmet before she entered the start gate. Course workers had built high snow berms, large packed mounds, along two of the sharper turns to prevent racers from drifting toward the fencing. Turn 11, in particular, was known as one of the more technical sections. Several volunteers stood near that turn to monitor conditions and maintain the edge of the berm. From their position, they had a clear view of each skier as they approached at high speed. Sanna launched from the start with an aggressive line. Timing staff recorded that she hit one of the fastest early splits of the day. She maintained good speed through the upper section and held a solid stance on the long, sweeping turns. Observers at the mid-course checkpoint noted that she looked steady and in control as she approached the steeper lower section. The incident began as she neared turn 11, where the course curved tightly to the skier's left. A section of the snow near the entry had become polished smooth from earlier racers passing over it. When Sanna shifted onto her inside edge to begin the turn, she lost a small but important amount of grip. Witnesses later said they heard her inside ski begin to chatter, a rapid vibration that made a noticeable scraping sound across the hardened surface. The loss of grip pushed her slightly off her intended line. Once she started sliding outward, there was not enough room or time to regain full control. Volunteers near the berm saw her angle change as she approached the packed mound faster than intended. She struck the berm nearly sideways. Her helmet made direct contact first. The force of the impact snapped her neck instantly and redirected her momentum. Several volunteers saw her body lift slightly from the bounce before landing a few feet away near the safety net. Her skis detached during the collision, sliding down the course without her. Sanna stayed where she came to rest near the safety net, showing no sign of getting back up. Volunteers positioned along the turn raised their arms to alert race control, and officials radioed the start gate to hold the next skier. Staff reached her location quickly, and based on her unresponsive condition and the position of her body, they recognized the severity of the impact. Racing was called off on the spot. Competitors waiting higher on the course were directed to head back toward the lodge, and workers used a snowmobile to cordon off turn 11 while they assessed the scene and secured the area. Later, race officials confirmed that Sanna died from a cervical spine fracture, the type of injury that occurs when the neck absorbs a sudden, forceful impact. When she struck the snow berm, her helmet hit first and transferred the force straight into the upper part of her spine. The berm itself had been packed tightly by course workers, making it almost as solid as ice. Combined with her downhill speed and the sideways angle of the collision, the impact placed extreme pressure on her neck in a single moment. According to the medical assessment, the fracture disrupted the spinal cord at a high level, stopping all neurological function immediately. The injury was described as instantly fatal, with no possibility of survival once the force was applied. After the incident, staff closed the course for the day and announced that the remaining heats would not continue. The berm at turn 11 was reshaped and inspected again before future events were held on the same track. Sanna's collision showed how a single patch of ice can send even experienced racers off their line. But not every deadly impact happens at high speed. Some occur in the middle of routine games played in small community rinks. On December 19, 2017, an early morning freestyle skiing session was held at the enlarged competition halfpipe in Breckenridge, Colorado. The resort offered these sessions for advanced hobby riders, coaches, and local athletes preparing for regional qualifiers. The halfpipe had been groomed before sunrise, and the snowfall from the night before had stopped, leaving the walls firm and smooth. Temperatures were low enough to keep the ice hard, and visibility across the deck was clear. One of the skiers that morning was Maya Collins, a 23-year-old part-time ski instructor from Denver. She spent most winters teaching beginner lessons and spent her free time practicing tricks on the halfpipe. She was not a professional athlete, but she trained consistently and hoped to enter a regional competition the following season. Riders who saw her regularly knew she attempted complex spins and rotations even though she wasn't part of any sponsored team. Around a dozen riders and a few coaches stood on the viewing deck, watching people take turns dropping in. Maya completed 2 warm-up runs without problems. She moved smoothly through the pipe, performing basic grabs and spins to build confidence before attempting any advanced tricks. Nothing in those first runs suggested any equipment issues or instability. Her third run began normally. She dropped in from the right side, gained speed along the first wall, and lined up for a corked 720. a trick she had successfully landed only a few times during previous sessions. According to witnesses, her approach speed looked slightly slower than her earlier attempts, likely only a few miles per hour off, but enough to change the height and timing of her rotation. She continued toward the lip with a steady line, but as she launched upward, her rotation did not initiate with the same force as before. Multiple riders later said they noticed the lag almost immediately. Instead of a clean off-axis spin, her body rotated slower than needed to complete the trick. When she came down, she did not meet the slope transition of the half-pipe. Instead, she dropped nearly vertical toward the flat bottom. Several people standing on the deck saw the moment it happened. Maya's head struck the icy flat surface first, followed by her torso folding behind her from the impact. The sound of the collision carried across the pipe and caused a handful of riders to step forward. She stayed on the ice exactly where she landed, showing no signs of trying to get up. The snowboarder who had been closest to the impact called out to the staff on the deck, and several riders nearby lifted their arms to get officials' attention. People kept their distance while waiting for help, leaving a clear path for the coaches who hurried down the access lane. The half-pipe went silent as officials reached her. It took only a brief look for them to recognize the seriousness of the situation. The way she had dropped almost straight down, combined with the direct head impact, pointed to a major injury rather than a routine fall. Her helmet showed no visible cracks, but the force had traveled through it and into her neck, causing damage consistent with a high-energy vertical impact. The session was shut down as soon as the officials confirmed the seriousness of the situation. Riders walked back to the deck, and the resort closed the half-pipe to all guests for the remainder of the morning. Later that day, officials confirmed that Maya died from a vertebral artery tear, which caused rapid internal bleeding shortly after the impact. The half-pipe remained closed until the next day, while staff reviewed conditions and made minor surface adjustments before reopening it to the public. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow and check out the next episode.